Hey everybody. So today Orange County, California actually announced that they are moving into the next tier of their COVID recovery, which is the yellow tier. And I kind of wanted to take a couple minutes to talk about what that means for the parks in Orange County, namely Disneyland and Knott's Berry Farm, and kind of what my thoughts are on that and how it might actually affect your in-park experience. So I'm going to spend a few minutes doing that. Before we do, make sure you click down below and subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate it. We actually just finally passed 2,000 and we're looking forward to getting even more. So as I mentioned, today they announced that Orange County is moving into the yellow tier, which obviously opens up a lot of different things, in the county, and obviously as well for our purposes, opens up some things in theme parks. So one of the things that it actually does do is theme park capacity now is set at 35%. So it has been at 25%, and is now set at 35%, which means obviously more reservations are going to become available for those parks. I know Knott's in particular, it's been pretty hard to get a reservation there over the last couple of weeks. So obviously there'll be more reservations available for that park, moving forward here in a little bit. And then Disneyland as well. Obviously with, having to pay for tickets and things like that, getting into that park hasn't been as difficult since there's no annual passes or anything at the moment. But kind of looking at the trend over the last few weeks from pictures that we've seen from the first week that the park was open until, this past week or even the last few days, you could definitely see an increase in the park capacity or in the numbers of people that were just basically around the park. It hasn't really been affecting the wait times too much, from what you can see on the app and what people have told us from their experiences in the park. But you can definitely see more crowded walkways and things like that. So basically the way it works is, the capacity is set by, what they can actually have open. So as the parks start opening more restaurants, or eateries or retail establishments or attractions, that increases the capacity of that park. So if it's 25% and you have, let's say, 10 restaurants closed and you have 5 stores closed, and then you end up opening up those 10 restaurants and 5 stores because you've hired cast members or employees or team members or whatever the parks called them, it increases the capacity of those parks. So that's probably pretty likely why we've seen more people just kind of around the parks over the last couple of weeks than we saw the first week they were open. So that's great. People are getting back to work. People are getting their jobs back. That's all great news, and I'm super happy to see that. On the flip side, though, with this 35% capacity now, the limits on attractions are actually still exist, right? So every other row, for example, one party per row. So if you're only one person and it's a 4-seat ride, you're taking up the entire row. For example, a couple weeks ago when I did Universal Studios, I was solo when I did the studio tour. Gabe from Theme Park Duo was there with me, but he left before the studio tour. And that's usually sits, 7 or 8 people. I took up an entire row for myself. Obviously, that's a huge reduction in capacity. So I think, again, going up to 35% means we're on a road to recovery. People are getting their vaccinations. The numbers are going down. Super great news all around. I think it's great. On the flip side, though, by not increasing the capacity of attractions, it's probably going to affect your in-park experience a little bit in a negative way. And again, this is assuming that they actually go up to that capacity, that 35% capacity over the next couple of weeks. Disney or Knott's or any of the parks have not said if they're actually going to do that yet, as of the time I'm recording this. So perhaps they're going to stick with the 25% capacity until the June 15th date that our governor has set for reopening things at 100%. So perhaps things are going to be, status quo for the next month, which is fine too, and then kind of ramp up to that next level. I think that probably is the best idea, but we'll see what happens. But again, for the most part, I think that most attractions can probably increase their capacity, maybe to one party per row instead of skipping every other row. There are definitely attractions I think that you probably shouldn't do that, namely things like Pirates of the Caribbean. I still think skipping every other row on that one is probably a good thing, and then one party per row, just because you're in an indoor space for an extended amount of time. It's dark. People are probably taking off their masks, all these different things. So I think that's probably a good idea. And as I mentioned, the studio tour at Universal, you're sitting there for 45 minutes to an hour. I think that's probably another one that, even though the capacity is dramatically reduced, I think that keeping people separated for the time being is probably a good idea on that as well. But I still think, that amount of time, I think it's probably still a good idea to separate people. But then you have things like, for example, Jurassic World at Universal. I don't see any problem with loading every row, just one party per row. It's a 4 to 5 minute ride. There's the inside portion is pretty short, so I think I'm okay with that. Things like the Mummy, things like Space Mountain or Big Thunder Mountain. Incredicoaster, it's an outside coaster. I don't see any reason why you would need to skip a row on that. Things like that. So I think you kind of have to look at each attraction as an individual entity and say, okay, this attraction needs to have a distance, and then this attraction is okay. For example, like all of the coasters at Magic Mountain, there is no reason why they need to skip every other row on those coasters. They're 2 to 3 minute rides tops. It's outdoors. People are keeping their masks on. The parks are actually being pretty adamant about that I've experienced. So I think that you can't have just a blanket. This is the way it's got to be. You've got to look at each attraction separately. So indoor attractions obviously a little bit different, I would say, but even like an indoor coaster like Space Mountain, I still, again, don't think that needs to be set at every other row. So it'll be interesting to see if the parks kind of start to push back on the reduced capacity limits. As of right now, they aren't pushing back on that, or I haven't seen any pushback on that. I know in Florida they kind of took away the every other row, the distancing requirements on their attractions, quite a while ago, and haven't had any issues with that. Even in the Bay Area parks that I went to over the weekend, they were also doing every other row, one party per row, on all of their outdoor rides, and being pretty strict about it as well. So again, I don't really see the point of it at this point with the way the numbers are. It doesn't really make sense to increase the capacity of being in a park and then not increasing the capacity of the attractions within that park. It's just going to create more people walking around the walkways. It's going to make sure those long socially distanced queue lines are even longer. I think of things like New Orleans Square at Disneyland. Not a whole lot of room. It makes it really hard for things like Pirates of the Caribbean or Haunted Mansion to have long, extended, outdoor, socially distanced queues, and then the capacity is low. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of handle that over the next couple of weeks. I know that we have some friends going to Disney over the next few days. We'll be at Knott's on Thursday evening for their 100th kickoff. Obviously, that'll be a little bit of a different thing than just a normal day at Knott's. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what happens there as well over the next couple of weeks. But we'll definitely be keeping our ear to what's going on. Seeing how this is affecting wait times, how it's affecting the crowds in the park, and then again look to see if these parks kind of start to push back a little bit on their distancing requirements for at least some attractions. I still think that some attractions need to have the distancing, but you have like these arbitrary things of, only a 15-minute dark ride. That doesn't really do anything. It doesn't make any sense. It's an arbitrary thing. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, to be honest with you. But then you have, the other things where you have to have every other row in a roller coaster that you're on for, 2-3 minutes. Again, doesn't really make a lot of sense. But some things do make sense. So hopefully, maybe they'll kind of start looking at things on an individual basis versus an all or nothing thing. And I think that would be a good thing. So interested to hear your thoughts. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Definitely interested to hear what you all think these parks should do to not only increase capacity within the parks now that they can, but to also increase capacity on their attractions, which they currently can't do. So interested to hear your thoughts. Share your thoughts below. And again, thanks for watching and have fun at the parks.